Go ahead, Mr. Rao.
A very good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, everyone, depending upon the time zone that you're joining from. I'm Rahul Singh, and I'm going to be the moderator for the session today, which is titled EE Essays Effective Management. This is also to update you that the certificates of participation are available for this session, and we will update you on the steps to follow so that we can send you individual certificates of participation. With this, I would like to go ahead and introduce the session leader today. I would have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Rajat Sabharwal, whose life has been associated mainly with the world of education for many years now, with the rich experience of 10 years in a variety of both national and international curricula. Mr. Rajat Sabharwal is one of the true believers and promoters of IB education, considering it an excellent curriculum providing students with the education required for having a bright future. As a lifelong learner, he has always been using any opportunity for his own learning and has been transferring his knowledge to other colleagues, believing that learning happens in collaboration and continuous sharing of perspectives and practices, for which we are here now. With this, I would pass on the baton to you, Mr. Rajat.
Thank you, Rahul. Thanks for those kind words. Greetings to all the members who've joined us for this presentation. I warmly welcome you all to this presentation where we will just try to talk about some best practices when it comes to extended essay. I'm going to begin my presentation by just sharing the session outcome. I've tried to cover three things in this particular session. The first part would be the basic understanding of extended essay. The second one would be effective management of this extended essay and trying to formulate an extended essay calendar, which we will do it in form of a collaboration. I'll start the session by sharing this diploma model. I'm sure as IB educators,
नोटबुक है ना एक एक्स्ट्रा देते एक नोटबुक देंगे तो बेटा लिया
uh, Mr. Rahul, if you can just mute your mic.
एक कामाचिन ना
I would request everyone to mute yourselves.
Right. Thank you. So I'm going to start with this diploma model, and I'm sure as IB educators, we've come across, especially diploma educators, we've come across this model multiple times. This is also there in our subject guides and general guide for IB. And also, when we look at the guide for the core, we again see this model. So we see a repetition of this model again and again in different areas of DP program. I'm going to request you guys, if you guys can just pen down some thoughts on the chat box, what comes to your mind and how do you interpret this diploma model? I'm aware that there would be some educators here who've just started their IB journey, while there would be some who have spent few years in IB. So just to basically brainstorm and just to think about and try to decode this diploma model, if I can request you guys to please share few pointers on this model on the chat box, and Mr. Rahul can just help us read those points.
Sure, Mr. Rajat.
If you can help us decode this particular model, what does this model depict?
Rajat, we do have a comment from Ms. Varduhi where she's saying it's about it being a holistic curriculum.
Right.
We're waiting for more answers. Participation would be appreciated. Everyone present, whatever you understand with the whole idea of diploma model, whatever your understanding, you can put in there in the chat.
Anybody? No? Okay, let's ask Mr. Rahul if Mr. Rahul can help us decode this model. So Rahul, if
Uh,
I can ask you to help me decode this model, what do you gather?
So, according to me, this model is somewhat like an effective implementation, I would say, or the idea of implementation, where it's more about the core elements going in sync with the other subjects that are there that the students learn. And as pointed out rightly by Ms. Varduhi in the chat, that it's a holistic curriculum. So it's all about the development through learning, through the practical application, through the whole idea of the skill based approach. While I say this, there are more answers coming in. Ms. Jyotika says learner centric teaching and learning for holistic development. Um, Nagam Abauli says interdependence. Mr. Rajesh says it's a well structured program that has ATLs to guide strategies to develop learning skills, followed with core components to apply learning into context, and the outmost being areas of knowledge.
Thank you. Very rightly put by all these educators in the chat box, and thanks Rahul for your inputs. So I just take it forward from where you guys have left. If you look at the diploma model, as mentioned by Ms. Varduhi, it depicts holistic education. If you look at the outermost circle of the diploma program, it talks about international mindedness and how we approach this through different subject areas or groups which we have. There are 6 areas for subject groups, uh, which are these. So every student picks up one individual subject from these groups. Then we move towards the core of the IB, and we have the core of the IB, which comprises of theory of knowledge, extended essay, creativity, activity, and service, and approaches to teaching and learning. So if a student has enrolled himself for a diploma program, uh, they must pass the core. Without effectively completing this core, they wouldn't be getting the diploma program. So the core element which we are picking up for this particular session, as we are aware, is extended essay. With that, I move on to the first activity for this evening, which is to actually just uh, try to remember few key features of extended essay. There is a possibility you guys have been supervisors for students before. You may not have been supervisors. You may be supervising this year or in the near future, or you're just here for the pleasure to learn what extended essay has to offer. So I would request you guys if you could go on this link and the session code. I think Mr. Rahul's put that on the chat box already. You guys can
Yes,
just
Rajat, it is live in the chat.
thank you, Rahul. So you can click on the link, and I'll request you guys to please uh, just go and participate in this activity and share your thoughts.
And just an update for everyone, when you're going there, when you're posting the thing, it doesn't accept any space. So mostly it will be accepting words from you and creating a small word cloud kind of setup where you will be seeing the words being reflected, the words that you have put in. So it doesn't accept any space. It just accepts words. So, but you can put in as many words as you feel like. Okay, Rajat, good words coming up. Research, reflection, practical approach, extended being the extended essay. And somebody has put in research to explore,
I feel research is the maximum at the moment. Can we have some more participant putting in their thoughts?
Yes, please. Everyone attending, the more you participate, the better it will become for us to learn together. So, research is the biggest word coming up, or the most voted for word coming
I
up.
see reflection is catching up.
We do have critical, we have thinking, originality.
Mandatory.
Mandatory. If I think somebody meant um, it to be a mandatory thing for getting the diploma, maybe.
Right. So we'll just wait for a few more seconds and then we'll just move ahead. Let's
We do
see.
have analysis coming up. Mini thesis, someone says.
Anybody, is there a limit on what is the word count for the essay?
Yeah, we can put in the word for the word count or
There
the
I
numbers
see
for the word
somebody
count.
put 4,000 there. It grows bigger and bigger. And there we go.
Uh-oh.
I think it's taking over research now.
Yes, let's see which one wins. Research 4,000.
Planning.
Planning is very small as of now. I think 4,000 is going to cross research. Yeah.
All right. Picking up from here, and I see that, some key elements which people have pointed out, which is research, 4,000, uh, learner profile is there, reflection, independent journey, right? And yeah, so taking up from here, let's get back to the presentation now. And I'm going to share the key features of the extended essay. Now, like I mentioned earlier, and few of you have also pointed it out in the word cloud, and as it appears, extended essay is compulsory for all diploma students. It is mandatory as a diploma student to do extended essay, and not just mandatory, a student must achieve a D or above. If a student fails to get a D, which means if a student gets an E or does not manage to do extended essay, he wouldn't be awarded any diploma. Also, it is externally assessed and it contributes to 3 bonus points. Apart from that, it is a formal piece of writing, which should not cross 4,000 words as mentioned in the as visible in the word cloud as well, along with 500 words of reflection, which is again a very, very important part of extended essay, which is your reflection, which comprises of not more than 500 words. We also need to keep in mind that extended essay is approximately 40 hours of student work. Apart from that, the supervisor is not supposed to spend more than 3 to 5 hours guiding the student, which also includes the mandatory reflection session. Any thoughts on this? You could probably raise your hand and speak. Anybody? Why do we have a cap of 3 to 5 hours for supervisor? Anybody, any thoughts? Why is it not more than 3 to 5 hours in this entire journey of extended essay? You could probably just raise your hand and speak.
We do have a participant, Rajat, Mr. Rajesh, trying to speak.
Yeah, so 3 to 5 hours is recommended for the supervisors because extended essay, IB expects the students to be, student-driven work and not completely spoon-feeded by some adult. And 3 to 5 hours is kind of enough for a supervisor to guide them on a track and then later let the student follow that path and carry the research.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Rajesh. Thanks for those important information. Thanks for that piece of important information. Absolutely. It's exactly that's the reason that IB doesn't want student to be spoon fed, and as it was reflecting in the word cloud also, uh, it is an independent research of student. Therefore, supervisor is just there to guide the student, and as we unfold this presentation, we'll just learn where and when the supervisor should intervene. Apart from that, at the end, there's a third and final mandatory reflection session, which happens at the end of extended essay, which is Viva Voce. Any thoughts, anybody? Why do we need to do this Viva Voce at the end of the reflection session when the journey of extended essay is over? Anybody? What's the importance of this Viva Voce?
Yes, Rajat, we do have a participant raising hand. Ms. Jyotika, if you can.
Yeah, I think it marks the culmination of that entire process and the journey of the extended essay. And it's important for us to know what the child has gone through in the entire 7 to 8 months. And also, it's a very important part in terms of, authenticating the student's work. It gets the supervisor to know if the child has approached it in the right manner and reached the conclusion or not.
Thank you so much. Very nicely put. And I totally agree with whatever she said. Thank you, ma'am, for your. Okay, now when I come to the policies relevant to extended essay, now I again want some thoughts on this. If I could request you guys, what are the policies which you think are important for students and supervisors? Are there any specific policies when it comes to extended essay? Uh, if you can remember any policies or any policies which come to your mind, if you could just put that on the chat box. Are there any specific policies which the students need to and the supervisors need to go through before the extended essay, or they just bang open with writing the extended essay straight away? If I can request anybody to put it on the chat box.
Okay, Rajat, somebody comments. Ms. Jyotika comments again. It's about academic integrity. Ms. Vichitra says academic honesty. Basically, it's all about the academic integrity, honesty coming up. These are the answers. Someone interestingly commenting animal use policy, body fluids usage.
Fantastic.
Ms.
Thank you,
Deepti
Rahul.
comments source citation.
Thank you so much. And yes, very correctly, as they've already been mentioned. Now, in this journey of extended essay, it is very important that before the students start writing the extended essay, if you go through the extended essay guide, there are a couple of policies which are a must read for all students and supervisors. And every student and supervisor must go through these three policies before they start guiding and before the student starts doing their extended essay. So the three important policies which you must go through in the entire journey of extended essay is ethical guidelines, academic honesty policy, and animal experimentation policy. Moving ahead, when we talk about the assessment criterias, we have five criterias, and the five criterias are in front of you, which is focus and method 6 marks, knowledge and understanding 6 marks, critical thinking 12, presentation 4, and engagement. Now, I'm going to be talking a bit about engagement later also when I discuss RPPF form. But at this stage, you could just raise your hand and you could just start speaking when Mr. Rahul calls out your name. Amongst these five assessment criterias, it could be again individual specific. Which one do you feel is the easiest to score, and which one do you feel is the most difficult to score? Again, let's have a collaboration. Let's try to understand and let's listen to each other. What are the challenges which we face or which we find easy? If you can just raise your hands, or you can put it on the chat box, which one do you find the easiest to score for the students and the most difficult, and why do you think it's difficult?
Rajat, we do have a participant, Ms. Swati, trying to answer the question. Ms. Swati, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I feel critical thinking, criterion C, is the most difficult one to score because here
Okay.
the students thinking analysis and thinking and connecting the subject knowledge further to the research is something which the child is accountable for. And the easiest one could be the knowledge and understanding which the child has gained from the subject knowledge, with the interest in the subject.
Rajat, we have another one. Ms. Jyotika, please go ahead.
Yes, Pam, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I feel presentation is the easiest to score on because there's a set flow and a structure to the extended essay which is easy to follow, followed by engagement if done in the right manner and if the reflection sessions happen on time and the reflections are evaluative in nature. And of course, the most critical part of it is the critical
इसका
thinking
वो किधर
and
है स्पीकर है किधर किधर
I would request everyone else to mute themselves, please. Very humble request.
so criteria C is the toughest. However, D and E could be easy.
Thank you. Uh,
Rajat,
yes,
I can take one more participant, Ms. Meenakshi Takwale.
sure.
Ms. Meenakshi, please go ahead.
Yeah, according to me, I think engagement would be the most simple one because those marks the student gains on the basis of his reflection in the RPPF, and that is just about how he went about with the research and how he decided the what direction is he going to take. I think if he is honest enough and if he has followed all the right policies, I think engagement he can do justice. And yes, critical thinking is going to be the most difficult because they're children and at many times they get stuck on their way, when they are doing things in their practical work and they don't get the expected results, what to do, how to think critically. That is I think, the critical point. That's the most difficult part.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ms. Meenakshi.
Thank you, Ms.
Rajat,
Meenakshi.
are we taking any more options?
Let's go forward, and then there'll be some more question, and then probably we can take more participations in the next slides. Okay.
Sure.
So moving on to the next part, as mentioned by you guys, if we look at the weightages of the criteria, we see that maximum weightage is there for critical thinking, and more or less others are more or less the same. Now, again, we can have participants speaking here now for this particular question which I'm putting forward. I noticed when I was marking few extended essay and I was also reading the examiner reports, sometimes students try to have their entire essay written in forms of subheadings, and those subheadings sometimes try to replicate the criteria. Any thoughts if that would be a good idea or a bad idea? So, for example, a student could write critical thinking and then critical thinking as a subheading in the essay, and then trying to uh, go ahead with the analysis and thinking part. Do you guys think it's a good idea or a bad idea? Any thoughts?
So I think it works for the II, but not for the extended essay because the extended essay, this is like, for example, critical thinking goes with evaluation. It's drawing connections all through. It's going back. You have to keep making a reference back to the RQ. It has to be justified all through everything that you're saying, relevant to the RQ. So I think critical thinking runs right through the extended essay. But with the II, it's very different. For the II, you can have in ESS, II, you can have the side headings as the criteria as the side headings.
Thank you. Any
Rajat, that
more?
was Ms. Natasha Popley.
Thank you, Ms. Natasha. Very nicely put across. Do we have any more participants raising hand? Or
I see a new hand raised by AEJAZ. If that's, I think, Ajaz. Mr. Ajaz, if you can.
Okay, then I'll put you in the spotlight, Mr. Rahul. What are your thoughts on this?
I will tell you first about a few comments coming in. Ms. Meenakshi says not a good idea. Ms. Jyotika says not a good idea. And Ms. Jyotika says again, it has to be embedded in the flow of EE. I would also go with the majority here, Mr. Rajat.
Okay, so yes, that's one thing which I wanted to point out, because I've seen couple of essays where students have tried to have subheadings such as critical thinking, analysis, and we should totally avoid these kind of subheadings. Okay, like already mentioned by others, it should be embedded throughout the essay and not just a part of the essay. So that's one thing which we can keep in mind when we are guiding our students during the journey of extended essay.
And also, I do think,
Yes.
Rajat, that that is something very um, unnatural to point, let's say, an examiner towards a certain section where you've been trying to show that, okay, this is a particular section where I have implemented it, where the flow of the whole essay has to include all of that.
Right. Thank you. There you go. Now I have these two images in front of me. What's the significance of these two images? Now, why I've put this image in front of you is because this is trying to depict a journey of extended essay. It can be the left or the right. So, anybody, any thoughts on what they think this how they think the two journeys differ from each other?
I think with the one on the left, it's kind of there's a logical progression to what is going on. It's streamlined. The content of the thought flow is streamlined. But with the one on the right, if it's analogous to an extended essay, what tends to be the case is that the extended essay might become descriptive or narrative and less analytical and less evaluative. So I think that's my interpretation of these images. With
Thank you.
respect
Rajat, that was Ms. Natasha speaking. I do see there are a few comments coming in. Clarity
Yes.
of pathway by Ms. Divya. Ms. Meenakshi says clarity of ideas.
Okay. Can we focus on this clarity of pathway? Ms. Divya, would you like to speak on this? What are you trying to say here?
Namaste. Hello,
Hey everyone,
namaste.
many times I feel that the child starts with one subject extended essay but then move towards another one. So I think clarity is very much required. Which subject you have selected, your extended essay should be towards that only. So as the picture is depicting that there is a clear pathway to reach towards destination, contradicting to the other one.
Right.
That's my interpretation.
Rajat,
Thank
we
you.
also have one more hand raised by Ms. Savita Chaudhary.
Yes,
Savita,
Miss.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I thought the second image is more or less a prediction of what's going to happen, rather than the it's taking its own course, and along the way you go do your critical analysis, and which is what it shapes it, even though it's within a framework on the sidelines. However, there is an openness about taking its own turns.
So you're talking about the left one or the right one? The woods or
I said that I started with the blue image where the trees are there
yeah.
in the blue color. It's predictable, like this is how it's going to be. Whereas on the other side, the critical approach will give it a required shape, and it's that depends on the student's perspective.
Right. Thank you. One more last. If you have any more hands raised, Rahul, or should I move ahead?
I do see some hands raised, but these are the hands raised from the earlier
Okay,
questions.
we can. All right, from the earlier questions, right? So it's
Yeah, can
There
uh,
is a hand raised by Ms. Ruchika. Ms. Ruchika, please go ahead.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, what I can see in these two picture is left hand side, as we can see that one tree and there is a flow. We can see in the way that everything around that tree we can treat it as a research question. So our essay is around or toward that research question, pointing toward research question. But in the right hand side, we can see that as many of our, my student did last time also, he started with something with one research question, but while writing, he went to the another flow. I mean, So I think so this right hand side picture shows that we start something, then we are okay writing we want to cover everything under one research question. That is not possible. So
Thank you
this
so
is
much.
my understanding.
Thank you so much, Miss Ruchika. And I'm so glad Rahul picked you up for this question because this is exactly what I wanted to talk about.
And
So,
Rajat, there are some interesting answers coming in, just to interrupt you in between. Miss
yes,
Renu in the chat says left student is clear in ideas, interest, and subject connections. Right, not clarity, and it's directionless. Miss Madiha Musharraf comments left one is leading to conclusion clearly, the right one is just a guessing game.
thank you so much, Rahul. Interesting answers. And yes, that's why planning is very, very important when it comes to extended essay. And there are two kinds of planning which I'm going to be referring to. One would be the content or the kind of research we are looking at, and the other one would be the time management, right? So, visualization of the journey is very, very important for the students, and the supervisors need to guide them because the supervisor needs to tell them the expectations. Therefore, it is important to be clear from the beginning to the end. Definitely, if you look at the left picture, there could be some very interesting deviation, but not a complete switch from the topic, right? That's not what should happen. Slight deviation works well, and as we can see in the picture on the right, that's completely being lost. So planning is extremely important, and that's when we start discussing about the effective management of the extended essay. Now, I'm just taking a situation here. Different schools might have different sessions, but in generic, if you look at the Asia Pacific area, and we talk about the diploma program, generally it starts in the month of August for most schools. Uh, I've taken this hypothetical date of 1st August, and the final submission we upload the essay on IBIS by 15th March. So I'm taking the submission deadline as 1st March because we can't really stretch it beyond that since we are very close to submission. And we have this calendar which is in front of us, 1.5 year journey from the beginning. This is the beginning point to the end point. Now, I'm sure by now, I think Rahul's already shared the Padlet link.
Yes, Rajat, it's
And
like.
what I want you guys to do is within this entire journey, 1.5 year journey, I would like you guys to place a month, a particular month or a date for all these five, uh, you know, checkpoints for us. When should the first checkpoint happen? When should the second checkpoint, third, and the fourth and the fifth should happen? Right? So if we can just go on the Padlet link, I'm going to share my screen and I'll go on the Padlet link and I can request you guys to just write a name and make a small calendar here, and then we'll just refer to this calendar.
And I would also request you to put your name so that it's easier to talk about a certain point or a certain participant who has mentioned something very effective.
I'll share the screen again. I'm just requesting you to go on the Padlet link, which Rahul has shared on the chat box. Once you are on the Padlet link, there are some instructions there. Just follow the instructions. All you're supposed to do is you have this 1.5 year in front of you. How would you place these five checkpoints in that 1.5 year? Can I request you guys to also put in your names?
Okay, so we do have some names coming up, some options coming up. Rajat?
Yes.
I do see Mr. Rajesh, Miss Asha. Okay. Somebody says December 21 as the extended essay orientation. Introduction to supervisors could be, the date is not mentioned there.
I think when we talk about being lost in the wood or having a future pathway in front of us, would work out to be very effective if we have a 1.5 year planner in front of us. And that's the precise reason why we are doing this particular activity. I'm going to be leaving this Padlet link on for 24 hours because all of us can always go back to this Padlet link and take away from our colleagues what they feel, because every individual school might have different comfortable deadlines. So this is just an idea to, you know, rough idea when and how it should happen. Can we have some more participation? Anybody finding difficulty to join the Padlet link?
And in the meanwhile, I would request everyone again to mute yourself. I do think there are some interesting responses coming in. Madiha response December 21 as the orientation date, Feb 22 as the introduction to supervisors, April 22 as the first reflection, July 22 as the second reflection, and third reflection viva voce in Feb or March 23.
DSR. I see Mr. DSR very nicely put. Simply
the dates.
The dates. Fantastic. Another 2 to 3 minutes and then we will move on to the next stage. So I request if you can participate.
Rajat, I think Mr. Rajesh has updated it. He's saying introduction to supervisors and the orientation to go together. And first reflection in December, the second reflection in March next year, and the third reflection going as a part of January or February next year. We do have Miss Asha commenting extended essay orientation in August 21, then September 21 for the introduction, first reflection March 22, August 22 as the second reflection, and January to February 23 as the third reflection viva voce.
Ms. Natasha has also updated the Padlet link. So I think what I can gather from here, more or less, people are on the same page. Wow, I can see more participation happening now. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this link on for 24 hours. You guys can always come back on this link and have a look at the calendar which is most suitable for your individual school. While what I have done is I have tried to, according to our school schedule and in generic, I've tried to make a rough calendar which you guys can copy if you want to, and you guys can have a look at it if it works for your school. But probably you can see the gaps between the months and the dates to give you guys a fair idea how it should be. Now, I've tried to divide the entire process of extended essay into 3 journeys. The first one being the most important because that's the base which we are building up for the student, and we call that extended essay orientation stage. The second one being the reflection process. where we talk about first reflection, second and the third reflection, and the third one being uploading of extended essay. And that's our happy moment. So looking at the first stage, which is extended essay orientation. Generally, like I mentioned, we start the session in the month of August. Students settle in, have some idea about what IB is all about, try to understand the diploma model. August and September goes into that. And in the month of October, right, what we can do is we can start with the orientation process, and we can divide the entire orientation process into 4 headings, which could be very generic orientation of extended essay. What are the requirements of the essay in general? Then talking about the research skills, academic honesty sessions, and sourcing and referencing. Now, it is very helpful, and I've noticed, like, in few schools they use their librarian, they take help from their librarian, because they are experts when it comes to citations, research skills, academic honesty. They have great skills when it comes to facilitating the students. So in our institute, in our school, we take the help from our librarian, and I totally recommend you guys also to bring in your librarian and try to take help from your librarian in the generic orientation stage, where they could talk about research skill, academic honesty, sourcing and referencing. Then we move to subject specific orientation, which again can be in the month of December, first week, or January, fourth week. I've put a cap here. Why? Because depending upon when your school breaks for Christmas, so again, it could vary from one school to the other, but in general, once we've had our orientation, the first generic orientation would take about a month, month and a half, if we are doing it effectively. So once we do that 1.5 month of training for them, then we can move to subject specific orientation, whether in the month of December or January, whenever it's feasible for our school. After we've had the subject specific orientation, which we do for group 1, group 2, group 3, 4, 5 and 6, what we do at our school is we ask the student to fill in a subject proposal form after the subject specific orientation. Now I'm showing you a sampler of this subject proposal form which we have, where generally student shares their thoughts. Obviously the topic cannot be sure at this moment, but they have some idea after going through all the 6 areas, all the 6 groups, what group they want to choose, what subject they want to choose, what topic, like in general, it can't be a short topic, but what's in their mind, what do they want to explore, and just about 100 words of what is interesting them, why is that particular thing interesting them, because that just builds up some form of seriousness for the students. And not just that, as an extended essay coordinator or as an IB coordinator, it really helps the coordinator or the you know uh, academic coordinator to understand how to distribute supervisors, in the sense that how many students are opting for a particular subject and how many supervisors would be required. Because again, extended essay is also not an easy task. You can't give 8 to 9 extended essay to one supervisor to guide. So we need to have a cap there. Therefore, it's advisable that we have a subject proposal form, which is to be filled immediately after these specific orientations, so that we can do a planning. And that's when we have some time in between to see how many supervisors we have with us. And based on that, we can introduce them to the supervisors in the month of February, after the winter break, Christmas break. And then we move to the second stage, which is stage 2 reflection process. Here again, varying, but I noticed from the Padlet link also, more or less a lot of dates do match. There are 3 mandatory reflection sessions. First one, could take place in the month of March, and then you have a gap. You should have a gap of about 4 months, right? About 5 months, so that what happens in first reflection, student has some time to think about it and come back and give some quality writing when they give their second reflection. Now, can we have any thoughts on what first reflection should be like? I would. Are there anybody raising their hands, Rahul?
Let's see. Let's wait for a minute, Rajat. We do have the hands raised from the earlier questions, but we don't have any new hand raised. Let's wait for a minute and let's see.
Any thoughts, anybody, for what first reflection should comprise of, and what happens between first and second reflection? So do we just leave the student?
If I may, well, yeah, this is Dipti here. Well, to what I have experienced till now as an EE supervisor, the first reflection is where I guess we freeze the research question. Of course, the subject, the research question, because many times students contemplate and deliberate a lot on the research question, even if their primary source is something which they have frozen, but they're not clear themselves about the RQ. So there's a lot of discussion which takes place with their supervisor as to how valid is it and how much you can extend your analysis into that particular through that RQ. That's one. I had a query about your generic orientation. If you can just take that after the responses you get for this.
Sure.
Rajat, that was Miss Deepthi Raswant. Miss Deepthi, we will surely take up the question in the question answer session at the end. And as of now, there's no other hand raised, Rajat.
So if I can just ask Ms. Deepthi, what happens between first reflection and second reflection? So we met the student in the month of March probably, and do we meet the student after that in the month of August, or what goes on in between?
Ms. Deepthi, would you want to answer that?
Are you going? Should I go according to your calendar? Okay, so we meet the student for the first time in March, and then we follow with him regarding his, I guess, the research. What are the kind of secondary sources that he has been able to research on, which are relevant or which can be compatible with his the primary source? Number one is that. What kind of the line of inquiry what he's going to take on. So I start asking them to start giving me a mind map as to how they're going to plan there. I don't need writing. I don't expect writing at the second reflection. What I like to get is from them is a clear mind map as to how are they going to conceptualize their writing. And that's very important for me.
That's why we go back to this picture. Very rightly said, the mind map. The mapping is very important and the planning is very important here, right? Thank you for your thoughts there. So in between first and second and the third reflection, we must have a multiple check-in sessions. However, these are not formal sessions which we have with our students, but in generic, this is just to probably we bump into them on the corridor or after the class. If the student is with us in the class, we can just stop the student for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, talk to them what the progress is all about. If they are stuck somewhere, what could they read? Anything on those sorts or those lines could be in the check-in session. However, the 3 reflection sessions are very important, and that's the time when we are referring to those 3 to 5 hours of supervisor time that fits in here, and they have to be recorded in the RPPF form, which is the engagement criteria of the assessment criteria, and it is worth 6 marks. So that's the second.
Mr. Ra.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Rahul, sorry, Mr. Rajat, sorry to interrupt. If I may put it in words, I feel the first reflection tells the students reason for choosing that particular topic and how the child is going to move further. And then when there is a gap of few months and the child is ready for the second reflection, at least the 2000 words should be written by the child, and the child knows what's the challenges he or she is facing, whether the child is on the right track or not, and whether the
Absolutely.
final output is going to be as per the research question decided by the child.
Absolutely correct. So, first reflection is just the thought, the way forward. The second reflection will not be effective if the child does not produce minimum 1500 to 2500 or 2200 words. It will not be effective because that's the entire body, the way it starts shaping up, the way extended essay is shaping up. It already shapes up by second stage and the second reflection. And slowly, wherever they are stuck, we can always guide them and we can take it forward from there. And after that, the last stage, which is the third reflection, and there is a mandatory recording of Viva Voce, which is supposed to happens at the last stage. And that's not the time when we are giving feedback. That's the time when we are celebrating. So that's the entire journey for the student coming to an end after their third reflection. And the happiest moment for us as supervisors is when the essay is finally uploaded and done with by March 15th. So we end up by this third, we end this in the third stage when the extended essay is uploaded. That's why looking at the three stages, orientation is very important. Moving on to the reflection process and meeting the student in the check-in sessions, and after the third reflection, the celebration, we go into uploading of the extended essay. Now, with this, I come to the end of the presentation. I think Ms. Deepthi had a question regarding the orientation stage. Ms. Deepthi, if you want to come in now, put the slide on the orientation.
Yes. Yeah. Rajat, I just want to ask everybody, including you here. I don't know. It of course it depends upon the ability of the cohort, but do you think it's recommended and it is acceptable as per the IB norms also that we can incorporate a session which is basically on analytical writing? Because I feel a lot of students who come to IB from non-IB background have a major problem in producing those 1500 2000 words even at the second stage of reflection. I struggle a lot. There are times when I have to, in spite of me giving them, because see, the IB kind of recommends certain things about how much 3 to 5 hours. Beyond that, we shouldn't be, kind of guiding them and supporting them. Now, that is where my dilemma is. How much and to what extent can I go, or should we just preempt the whole thing that yes, this writing is needed? Critical thinking is one thing, but critical thinking on the paper becomes a little different challenge in all itself.
Thanks, Deepthi, for putting that across. And it's a very good question because critical thinking, it is maximum marks when it comes to extended essay also. However, yes, when student comes into diploma program, it's a challenge for them. But at the same time, it's a journey which we are looking at. So critical thinking is not just which is evident in extended essay. When we talk about all subject groups, when the student is doing their IAs, when the student is doing practicing past year papers or any IB form of question, in this entire journey, slowly, they start developing that critical thinking skill. And, referring to again Bloom's taxonomy is one model which is again referred very commonly when it comes to higher order thinking skill. So, the limitation of 3 to 5 hours, yes, we need to respect that limitation. We can give students reading material when the student are doing their internal assessments in our particular subject, when the student is doing past year papers, sharing the marking scheme, sharing the sampler is very important. And again, it's a good idea to share the examiner's report which is available every year. Anybody else who would like to answer this question for Ms. Deepthi?
Let's see, Rajat. I'll be
Actually,
waiting in the
we
lobby
at
for someone to raise
DPSI,
their hand.
uh,
Ms. Swati?
yeah, I was saying ki we, for the non-IB students, we do the immersion in the beginning when they join. For example, the school starts from the month of August, then we call them from April to till May, and in immersion we make them understand the requirements of IB, the core requirements, how to do the mini research, give them a topic on which they can talk about, they can do the research and present their paper and all. So that time lag of April to May we utilize to do this.
That's probably possible because of the Indian curriculum, a switch from Indian curriculum to international curriculum, right? Probably
Yeah,
because of that reason, right?
right.
Right. Uh, any more thoughts? Rahul, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
Okay, I would want to add on here that, okay, I do agree with the whole idea of the introduction, or as we mentioned, the whole Indian curriculum setup where we do get that window of 2 or 3 months. But I would also say that this idea, the question raised by Ms. Deepthi was that how do we embed that whole idea of research, the whole idea of analysis, following the Bloom's taxonomy. And even if we try, as Ms. Swati suggested, at times we have seen it, that even if we try our best, the initial 2 or 3 months when we start with IB, let's say, when we don't have the time for orientation, the initial 2 or 3 months at times are not sufficient. It would need a regular feedback session kind of thing, a regular update, a regular, I would say, session with a lot of reflection from the students' part, where obviously TOK comes in and helps them develop multiple perspectives, go ahead with research and everything. But yeah, I do think that it's a continuous process, Rajat. That would be my thought. But yes, there are multiple students. The cohort completely depends on the cohort. At times, the cohort supports the other participants inside the cohort to help them develop the whole idea within a month or two. And at times, it doesn't happen as we expect. So it
Thanks,
has to
Rahul.
be need based, I would say.
Thanks, Rahul. And like I mentioned earlier, it's probably a journey. Now, Deepthi, giving you an example, I also teach economics. So, just from the perspective of economics, also, if I talk about uh, in economics, we are also supposed to do IAs in the first year itself. When we talk about we do three IAs. So, microeconomic, we may do one particular portfolio, but yeah, there are three commentaries which we do. And the first one starts immediately in the first year itself. So probably when the students are introduced to IA, when the students are given samplers of exam style question, there is a portion of evaluation which comes in, and somehow, like, we are able to help them to have some idea about higher order thinking skills also. So that slowly develops over years. In the entire journey of the diploma program. But yes, immediately coming in from grade 10 into BP1, they do face challenge. DP, I hope we were able to justify it. Now, Rahul,
Okay.
are there any more
Yes, Rajat.
questions?
I would just pitch in for a minute and I would request everyone who's present to click on the link that was posted in the chat, because this feedback form that you're going to fill in will also be about putting in your name and your email IDs, the correct email IDs, so that we can send you the participation certificates. So it would be very important for you to click on this link, try and submit the feedback if you can. We would be sending out the participation certificates very soon, depending upon the correct email ID provided by you with this feedback form. And apart from that, I would also like to tell you that we do have a series of sessions coming up with Genesis Global School. And we will keep you updated with all the sessions coming up. All the sessions would have the participation certificates. We do have, because the extended essay or TOK or any subject in IB is not something that we can cover up in a session of, let's say, 45 minutes or 1 hour. So we do have a series of sessions coming up for you. Please keep us updated with your email IDs so that we can uh, provide you the participation certificate. So it's
Rahul, if I may just
Mr.
ask,
Rajat,
oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
uh,
can I ask something?
yes, it's
My
better
name
if
is
you raise your
Aditi.
hand so that I can see you rather than yeah. So Ms. Deepthi,
Okay.
go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask my other panelists, including you, if you actually have a session like where a session like you had for the citations and sourcing and research, do we can we have a session? Is it okay by IB, by the guidelines, that we can have a session for writing, for for helping students either from national curriculum or even from MYP, coming from MYP, just to have a session right at the beginning that is part of the orientation, just to kind of praise them with what is an analytical writing, and if they want to practice in a few samples, with a few samples.
So just to be clear, Ms. Deepthi, you're asking about the practices that we follow in our school.
Yes, please.
So,
Mr. Rajat, would you
yeah. Deepthi, I'm sharing my slide again. In this orientation, generic orientation, for the first 2 months, we actually have the librarian pitching in, and the librarian tells the student what is the right way of citation and teaches them the entire research. We use JSTOR in our school, so how to go about the research and how to go about different forms of citation. For example, for psychology, they would do APA, otherwise follow MLA. So we in our school have these sessions at the beginning before subject specific orientation takes place, and
So
that's why I'm
are
saying
these group wise? Are these
that's
group
for the entire
wise?
batch. Yes,
The entire batch.
yes, that's for the entire batch, and that's
So,
why I
but there
said
is no specifically nothing for writing, right?
nothing for writing as such, but basically how to go about research and how to go about sourcing and referencing.
But if I want to add writing as one of the sessions for the during the orientation, is that advisable?
Again, like what form of writing are you referring to? Because if you look,
Analytical writing, a lot of kids, they limit themselves to descriptive writing. So how do they come about with the evaluation of the argument, and of course connecting it to the effect? What effect does it bring about?
so yes, that could happen in this bridge course probably, which was suggested by one of the panelists, not the panelists, sorry, one of the participant also. Apart from that, what I feel for every individual subject group, if we can make this a norm within our schools, where we start talking about different perspectives and analysis and evaluation from the beginning. When we look at the different perspectives, when we start teaching our particular subject. Before the extended essay comes the individual groups. So in the beginning only we can start talking about these things like and theory of knowledge, like different perspectives coming in. I think all that works plastically for the kids to understand uh, how they can dive into higher order thinking skills.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, Rajat, there is an interesting point coming up. Ms. Jyotika has commented that making students mark some exemplars and telling them to identify critical thinking points really
Absolutely.
helps. Agreed with you, Ms. Jyotika, and also to update you, Ms. Deepthi, TOK will actually help. So collaborating within the school, letting the cohort understand that TOK would obviously be extending a help to the extended essay in the whole idea of analytical writing, as we mentioned, or the whole idea of critical thinking, developing perspectives, because multiple perspectives would be really important for the students to understand, let's say, critical thinking or the analytical writing that you're pointing at.
So with that, I would just request you guys, if you guys have any questions, please stay back. Otherwise, please go to the link which Mr. Rahul has shared and just put in your names and email addresses. And we also have a TOK session which is happening, Rahul, tomorrow.
Yes.
Yes. So if you guys want, you guys could join that TOK session also.
We do have a feedback, Rajat, for you by Miss Shipra Tiwari saying, excellent PD session. Rajat, look forward to more of this kind.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we
And
are in
yes,
the process.
also, please feel free to connect with me if there are any doubts. If there's anything you require, I would be more than happy to collaborate. My email address is mentioned here. I will try to help you in whichever way possible.
Don't worry, we are still taking questions if you have nothing to ask. And if you want, because technically the time is over, so we cannot ask you to stay back or anything of that sort. But yes, if you want to leave, you can, and if you want to stay and ask a couple of questions, we can take 4 or 5 questions, right, Rajat? If I'm not wrong.
Sure, sure.
What do you say?
Sure.
Yeah. So we do have a hand raised, Rajat, by I don't know. It's an abbreviation NHSSTSTD2829. Uh, if you want, please go ahead. You can ask a question, you can give a
Uh,
feedback.
yes. First of all, actually, I'm using my cell phone, so I'm not able to access that link.
No,
But my
that's
question
okay.
is not like this. Basically, I'm totally new to IB. Mr. Rajat just mentioned about recorded in the RPPF form. So when he said recorded, that means it's a written work, right?
Yes.
And when you mentioned about 20 to 30 minutes about the interview, that is actually recorded. I mean
You
video
could
session
have an
or
interview, but being in this, virtual model at the moment, we
yeah.
recommend that, we should have a recording of that, but it's just an interview with the supervisor.
But then are we do we I mean submit this
No,
or no? It's
we,
for
we,
your
it's for our individual school policies, but since
okay.
there's this virtual scenario at the moment, I highly recommend that, since like we record our classes, we could also record this for
Okay.
reference.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Rajat sir, even I wanted to check that this recording is kind of an official thing. And
No.
second thing I want to ask that the reflections which you mentioned, so probably the like the student stage of development of extended essay, these reflections are kind of the top up with the student will do on reflection 1 to reflection 2. Is it the same journey or every time the student is supposed to write different reflections?
So you have a limit of 500 words, and there is a particular format which you're supposed to follow. So there is reflection one, which is separate, reflection two is separate, and reflection three is separate. Combined together, it should not exceed 500 words. So if you see practically to do the math, uh, just about 150 words for all the reflections. 160, 170 for one or two, but in general, about 150 words for the reflection, first and the second and the third.
Okay, noted. Thank you. And for the recording, is it an official which will be sending to the IB? No, right?
No, no, you don't need to send that to the IB, but as the celebration of the extended essay, we have to, have a Viva Voce with the students, and that also is to, question them about their journey and checking the authenticity of the essay.
Noted. Thank you.
Sir, can I request one thing?
Yes, please.
Sir, as I'm new to IB, okay, so actually I got this link from one of my friend.
Mhm.
So immediately I joined the session. Okay, so can I have the WhatsApp number so that I can join any group or anything else like
What you
that?
can do, sir,
Any?
what you can do is please note this email address. Just write to me, and then I will add you to a group of extended essay facilitators.
Okay, so just 1 second, sir. I will write the link.
Yes.
Mr.
Please.
Please,
HRS,
sir.
if you want, you can even take a screenshot of the same.
Okay, so can I write email to you, sir? Otherwise,
Please,
Mr.
please
Rajat?
do that. Whenever you need any form of support or help, I'll be happy to collaborate.
Yeah, actually, I'm very new, right? So I'm feeling, everything as strange. So I
No,
need to learn a lot.
No worries. We are IB has a learner profile. We are all learners.
Yes, sir. I agree. We are all learners. Still, we are learning.
Yeah.
At present,
Rajat
I'm
sir,
in Malaysia.
sir. Okay.
Sorry, ma'am. Speak, ma'am. Please.
Mr.
Please
Rajat,
carry on.
Ms. Sudha wants to ask something. Ms. Sudha, please go
Yes,
ahead.
yes. सर नमस्कार, पहली बार मैं भी क्लास ले रही हूँ, मतलब इस साल मैंने शुरू किया है, तो मुझे कुछ ईई के बारे में सवाल करना था।
जी।
जैसे कि मेरे बच्चे कंफ्यूज हैं कि वो जब लिखते हैं तो वो आई जैसे मतलब फर्स्ट पर्सन या थर्ड पर्सन किस किस रूप में लिखना है, जैसे हमने पाया कि, मैंने देखा कि।
हाँ, तो अगर एक्सटेंडेड ऐसे तो वो ऐसे लिख सकते हैं, मैंने पाया, मैंने देखा कि, बिकॉज वो उनका पीस ऑफ वर्क है, तो वो एनालाइज कर रहे हैं, सो वो ऐसे लिख सकते हैं,
मतलब फर्स्ट पर्सन में लिख सकते हैं।
जी बिल्कुल।
एंड सर जैसे रिफ्लेक्शन आपने बताया, तो बच्चों का रिफ्लेक्शन प्लस टीचर का रिफ्लेक्शन, सुपरवाइजर का, ये सब मिला के 500 होना चाहिए।
बच्चों का रिफ्लेक्शन होगा, इसमें सुपरवाइजर का रिफ्लेक्शन नहीं होगा। जब बच्चे तीनों रिफ्लेक्शन लिख लेंगे, उसके बाद सुपरवाइजर कमेंट होगा।
नहीं, वही आई मीन सॉरी कमेंट जो होता है, तो वो उसकी कोई नंबर ऑफ वर्ड्स है?
इसकी कोई वर्ड लिमिट नहीं है, ये स्टूडेंट्स के लिए 150 वर्ड्स एवरेज में बोल रहा हूँ एक रिफ्लेक्शन का, बट टोटल 500 वर्ड्स तीनों रिफ्लेक्शन का कंबाइंड टुगेदर वर्ड लिमिट है।
अच्छा ओके सर, पता नहीं मुझे बहुत परेशानी हुई है आज, मैं पैडलेट भी ओपन नहीं कर पाई हूँ, मैं फोन से जुड़ी हूँ, और जब मैं अपने से जो मुझे मोबाइल आई मीन जो गूगल पर मेरे पास मेल आया था, उससे मैंने ओपन करने की कोशिश की, पर वो ओपन नहीं हुआ।
No worries.
मिस आशिका मैम ने जो भेजा, फिर मैं उससे ओपन कर पाई हूँ।
Right. So you note down this email address. अगर आपको कोई भी प्रॉब्लम हो, you can always reach out to me.
ओके सर, थैंक यू सो मच सर। मैंने वैसे भर दिया अभी ये अपना दिस फॉर्म।
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Sir,
thank you
I
so
have
much.
one question, sir.
Sure, please go ahead.
Sir, according to EE guide, student can only move towards forward-looking question also, backward-looking question also.
It shouldn't be historical also, right?
Yeah. So,
and it shouldn't be futuristic also.
Not futuristic, because one of the, I think it was there something in EE guide that student can move towards forward-looking question also.
Yeah.
That's what I'm confused.
So basically it depends upon subject. So for example, if you talk about forward-looking, something which is like if I talk about economics, right? You can't predict policies. You can't predict what's going to happen in the future. So in that case, you're looking at something which is of recent time. If you're looking at historic, if you're doing an extended essay in history, then you look at a particular era, like it has to be before 10 years. So it depends upon different subjects.
So what about business? In business, they have to look for any situation which is for backward-looking question. Anything happen in the business.
Yeah.
But if any news is there related that something will happen in future, like company is planning, but they have not implemented that
business
particular.
Extended essay is secondary based, right? Secondary
Yes,
data.
Yes,
so depending upon the reports you have, what analysis are you doing, right? So you could do prediction also in that particular case.
But that students EE will not be rejected if student has taken any question which is forward looking in EE, business EE especially.
Again, recommended something which is at the moment currently happening, right? So again, like, something which has not happened at all, it's very difficult to comment on it and predict on it, right? So recommendation is that, let's look at the present or something in the most recent time.
Okay.
Thank you. So I do think Rajat have taken 4 or 5 questions by now. So
can you quickly share the link for the WhatsApp group you were talking about?
I just said if you can just write to me, I will add you there. Okay, just write on this.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So if there's anything, please get in touch with Mr. Rajat on this email ID. He will be happy to help. And Mr. Rajat, just to conclude before everything, just to say that I love the point where you actually said it's a point of celebration. So just with that point, I would love to conclude this session. And if there are any questions, obviously by now I think you would have put in your feedback through the feedback form link provided in the chat. And any questions, please don't forget to get in touch with Mr. Rajat. He has provided his email ID. If you want, I can provide his email ID in the chat as well.
Yeah,
That
please do
can
that.
be
I
done.
was looking for it. Thank you.
Yes. And Mr. Rajat, a great session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Rahul.
It was
Thank
very
you,
interactive.
everybody. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of the session. Have a great weekend ahead.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Rajat.
Thanks, Rahul. Thank you, everybody.